Welcome back, Los Angeles State Technical College, Summer 2014, Computer for Designers. We're here with an expert, Professor Jose Negrete with 3D Studio. And this is video 2. Once you created your kit of parts based on the Fabrici series, following some design rules and operations, you're going to bring it into 3D Studio to add materiality. So to do that, you need to import your drawing right here, import. You gotta make sure you have your directory and you created a nice file management system before. And so you open your drawing from AutoCAD. That's why it's an import, it's not an open as. And then here, this dialog box has so many options, so many things to worry about. So what we want to do here, and we want to bring it as an entity. And here at the very right here, you're gonna bring it as an entity instead of as layers. The rest, just take all of the defaults and we're gonna go okay. And here we go. So everything that you guys did in AutoCAD is now into a 3D Studio environment. You can look at it from the top view and just becoming familiar again with this view cube is very important because it develops your visual acuity and your visual expertise. That's one of the most important things that these new technologies provide to us. So now notice here, you're going to go here and select, where's your selection tool here? Right here, this arrow. And then you can close, I'm sorry, so it's this one. And then you can select, these are your different parts, right? Notice your kit of parts. So what we're going to do now is that here's your rotate command. You can actually rotate your screen, right, depending here on your rotate view, right, or you can rotate it in this direction, or you can go back into your box. So what we want to do here is start attaching materials to the object. So this is the most important dialog box in 3D Studio. You can create things, right? These are all your multiple geometries, your standard primitives, but you can also edit it. I'm going to give the mouse to Professor Negrete, and then I'm going to, he's going to explain the material attachment.
Right, so the material editor is located at the far right end of the main toolbar, and the keyboard shortcut for this tool is the letter M on your keyboard. So you can either click this icon or press M on your keyboard, and this will open the material editor. Now this editor is called the Slate Material Editor, and it's a newer editor to 3D Max, starting from about version 2012 or so. There's another material editor if you prefer under modes. It's called Compact Material Editor. So there's a little bit less to look at. You can check both modes out and see which one you prefer. But if we go back to the Slate here, so here, the main areas to look at is the material map browser along the left. So here you have either material templates or pre-made materials. If you scroll further down, here you can see the Autodesk material library, and you have the materials sorted by type. So here we have ceramics, concrete, masonry, metal, paints, stucco, etc. And if we expand some of these, you can see the pre-made materials that you have access to. So here we have concrete blocks, precast smooth concrete, concrete with stone, and so on. So this would be the easier materials to use. You can simply double-click on any of these pre-made materials. So here I'll just select one of these, precast smooth concrete. So when you double click a material, it opens it in the viewer, and here you have the main material container, and on the left you have maps that are loaded into the materials. So if we double click the main material container, you'll see the parameters on the right side. And like I said, these are already set up, so there's not really much you need to do with it. You can go ahead and assign this to your geometry as is. So in order to do that, you want to select one or more objects in your viewport. So here in this case, Marcela already selected one of the objects. And with the material active, you're going to click on the Assign Material to Selection button, which is along the top left of the Slate Material Editor. Has a small green cube in the icon. So once we click this icon, it'll map the material to the geometry. But as you can see, the geometry just turned gray. So there's one more button we have to click here, which is Show Shaded Material in Viewport. And this is a small checkerboard with a little light bulb in front of it. So once we turn that on, now we can see the concrete on the geometry. And another thing to note here is that the concrete scale doesn't look quite right on the geometry, so there's a modifier we have to add. And the modifier is added from the Modify tab, which is the second tab to the right on the command panel. So if you see, my mouse is hovering over it at the moment. So if we click here on the Modify tab, we see this current object's name, which happens to be 3D Solid, immediately followed by the modifier list, from which we're going to select UVW map. So we're scrolling all the way to the bottom and selecting UVW map. And this map happens to be set to planar mapping by default. And like that says, it's mapping in a plane form, so that's the X and Y axes only. In this case, because this object has a thickness, we want to use the box mode, which will give you X, Y, Z coordinates. And if you look closely here on the side of the slab, when I go back to planar, it's distorting the image, if you can see. And when I switch back to box, it's scaling the concrete on the side. The other thing to note is, by default, this UVW map is set to real-world map size. So what that means, it's taking the parameters that are preset in the material that we selected, and that's how it's deciding how big the concrete is being displayed. So if I go back to the material editor for a second, and we look here in our main material, in the parameters, the first section says color and it says use map. So that means it's using an image, and that's a picture of concrete basically that it's stretching over our geometry. So if we click in this slot here for the concrete, we can scroll down here and you see the scale. So this scale has been preset, and it's set to 8 feet wide by 5 foot 8 inches high. And then if we take a look at the image, here we can view it. So this is the picture of concrete that's being scaled on our geometry. So when this material was pre-made, they decided that the width is 8 feet and the height is 5 feet. If you like, you can change this size. You can rescale it to your own preference, or if you feel that the scale should be bigger or smaller. Likewise, if you were making the material from scratch, you would take your own picture of something, load it in here, and then decide what the scale is yourself.
And that's the way we're going to do populating the gallery for our final project. You will take a picture of some of your projects, and then you will attach it to a wall. But you can see this is how STEM, science, technology, and engineering, and physics connect to architecture, because all these materials actually have a materiality that you need to assign. So that basically what you need to do is, for the rest, we'll do it one more time, and let's do it just through the one that has the bubbles. But let's attach like some brick or wood. One last example. So if you just go to the materials, and let's go through the other kind that it just shows the bubbles. I kind of like that one better, that you just drag and drop. Can you show me that other environment?
Oh, the other editor?
Yeah,
sure. So if we go back to modes at the top of the editor, we can switch back to the compact.
So that one seems sometimes for me easier.
So here under compact, usually it's going to be default to Arc and Design type of material. And in the Arc and Design type, we have templates immediately underneath. So here we can select some templates that are preset. So Marcela wanted to see a brick, so if we go to masonry here, and I double click this bubble, we can stretch this out and have a look at the preview. So this material is pre-made just like the previous one, so we can go ahead and assign it as is. So the process is the same. We select geometry, And then even though this is a compact editor, the little button is the same for assigning the material. So here we click that button. The other thing you can do is click and drag the bubble.
Yeah.
And if you look at the cursor, it changed. So normally the cursor is just this arrow, but when I click and drag that bubble into the viewport, see how I'm getting that little black circle? Once I get the cursor over the geometry, it's going to change again to the little white arrow. So that means I can now release the button and it's going to assign this material to that geometry. And then like we had before, we had to turn on the show shaded material in viewport button, which again is a small checkerboard with a little light bulb in front of it. And so once I click that, the brick is going to show up.
Perfect.
All right.
So thank you. And that way you guys will be assigning materials to your kiddo parts, and you might want to start thinking about a function for it.